Well, that's not going to rust, that's for sure. Let's have a look down the fire tube. So you can see there's a fair amount of unburned fuel there, and that's the ignition port there. So you can see the whole charcoal bin has slumped down below the ignition port. So obviously I wasn't keeping up with the fuel. There you go, that's the wood that I chucked in just before the blowers stopped. So I'll fish that out. Alright, I think I'll get this stuff out and we'll have a bit of a look. Just a quick look down at the restriction with all the charcoal out. Yeah, that's still looking pretty good. Oh man, that's hard to turn. That is well and truly shearing. There's lumps of charcoal that hasn't been reduced yet. Because when I fired this thing up, that's what I filled it with. I can see it's moved up even further, so it's definitely riding over the top of the charcoal. Oh, there you go, look at that. It's risen up even further, so it just keeps climbing over the top of the charcoal. Let's have a look at this. I've just dropped the grate, and one thing I did notice is that the agitator is a little bit loose on the shaft, and I'm just wondering maybe I didn't quite tighten it up when I assembled the whole thing. Because I mean, it's not spinning, because if I press something like this, you can see it now rotates also the floor scrapers. Actually, feels like part of the sticking. So it's actually the floor scrapers aren't rotating very freely. Looks like the charcoal is getting stuck in between the tip of the floor scrapers and the wall of the gasifier. Okay, have a look at the one over there. Yeah, no. See that? Yeah, definitely the charcoal is getting stuck in between the floor scrapers and the wall of the gasifier. So I might just have to take half an inch or so off the floor scrapers. So all the bits have been taken out of the gasifier, and the set screw from the agitator, I had a real hard time getting it out. And I was quite surprised what I found. At first it looked like it had been ground a bit on the side here, but it hasn't been. But the whole thing, might be a little bit hard to see, but the whole thing's been bent. So the question before was, did I forget to tighten up the agitator? And well, no, I didn't. But just the sheer torque, just the sheer force on the agitator was enough to bend this set screw. So lesson learned is, yeah, I think I might drill and tap this out, put in an 8mm screw. Yeah, I guess it should be no real surprise really that this little wiper motor here was able to bend this 6mm screw. Because really when you look at it, you got the reduction of the worm drive gearbox on the wiper motor, and then here you got the reduction of the gearbox here, which is 100:1. So basically the torque from this little wiper motor gets multiplied by 100 times coming out of this gearbox here. So yeah, it is really quite a lot of torque. But first things first, I think I'll deal with the grate first. And yeah, it definitely looks like it's a little bit too aggressive, and there's just too much charcoal getting stuck down in here. So I don't know, I'm thinking probably the best way that I can lessen the gaps is I'm just going to cut up some bits of 25 by 5mm bar and just weld them in here and there. And yeah. All the little bits and pieces of flat bar have been welded in the grain. So yeah, as you can see, it's definitely reduced the amount of slots. It hasn't turned out too bad, I don't think. And definitely where the fingers of the agitator runs at 90 degrees to the slots, you can see it's reduced quite a bit. I mean, I think that's where a lot of the sticking was, rather than where the fingers run along the slot. Be interesting to see just how the charcoal interacts with this. Yeah, so I just took about 12mm or half an inch off the end of the floor scrapers. That should hopefully free things up. Rightio, so the grate, the agitator and the floor scrapers all back in place. Yeah, that's all looking fine. If you have a look at the floor scraper, you'll see that there's a bit more distance between the tip of the scrapers and the sidewalls of the gasifier. So hopefully that will resolve some of my sticking problems. Rightio, so the other problem I've got is the whole shaft travelling upwards, riding over the top of some of the charcoal. So I'm just going to make some sort of a clamp or some sort of a collar for the shaft to prevent that from happening. Oh, jeez. There we are, a simple little collar or clamp for our shaft. Voila. Alright, let's see how this fits on. So they'll just slide up on the shaft like that. We do up the set screw, and that should stop the shaft from travelling upwards. The only thing is, what I'm not really comfortable with there is this is now going to be putting pressure on the bronze bush. And yeah, I really don't want that to happen, because the bronze bush, I mean, it is there. I mean, it serves the function of both bearing and seal. So I really don't want to exert any mechanical force on it. So I might actually make something that goes around the bush and sits up against the floor. So that way any force will be transferred to the floor and not the bush. We'll see what we can come up with. There's not a lot of bush there to clamp onto. Goes up there like so, goes up against the floor, and I've just got a screw on that which just clamps it to the bush, just so the thing stays in place. And also just and it also prevents the thing from spinning on the bush. So I'm not going to do this up real tight at all, just yeah, just enough to keep it in place. That's all it requires. And then in between that and the collar, I'm just putting this flat washer. I've just put a bit of oil on it, so it's lubricated. Now the collar that goes on the shaft, I'm going to do that up tight as I can, because I don't want that to go anywhere. Okay, there we go. The other half of the coupling on. It just makes it a little bit easier to turn by hand. So there you go. So you can see the flat wash is spinning as well. Rightio, let's get the agitator drive back on. The agitator is back in. I just made up this bit of wiring loom here for the wiper motor, and I've used a automotive style connector, and that just makes it a lot easier and quicker to disconnect, especially since I no longer have to unbolt the ground wire. Right, so I'm just going to sprinkle a bit of charcoal down there, just a little bit. I don't want to put too much down there in case we have any problems. Right, yeah, here we go. Let's start with low speed. Oh, it's still. Yeah, it's still getting stuck a bit. I mean, it's not stopping, but you can just see some of the charcoal. Oh, look at that. Oh man, that's really, yeah, that's really taking quite a bit of force to shear those solid lumps of charcoal. Oh yeah. Okay, let's try high speed. At least the end of these scrapers aren't getting stuck. Yeah, I don't know. This is probably not really the result that I was after. I was hoping something a little bit smoother than that, but even though I got fewer and lesser gaps in the grate, look, it's still having to crunch and shear the charcoal. I'll just stop that. I don't know, even though it needs to be said that by right, when the charcoal makes its way down to the grate, they're supposed to have been fully reduced, and so they should, you know, be a lot softer. It should just be you know, ash. However, there will be times where you need to strip the thing down, and you know, for major maintenance and servicing and stuff like that. And just like now, where I'm having to start the thing with solid charcoal, unreduced, and there will be times like that. So I don't know, I'm beginning to feel that a rotary agitator is probably not the way to go. I think it's always going to be a problem. I think it's only a matter of time before something breaks. Yeah, I might have to rethink that. One bit of good news out of that, it appears that my clamp on the shaft there is working. The agitator hasn't travelled upwards, and the coupling here is still engaged. So at least that, I think, can be considered some sort of success. So about that agitator, I've been thinking about it a bit, and I came up with a couple of band-aid solutions, but I really didn't feel that that was the way to go. And like quite often happens, ideas sometimes come to me while I'm doing repetitive brain-numbing work or tasks, like moving pavers, for example. So I came up with this idea, how to fix the agitator problem without pulling the whole thing apart and starting all over again. Yeah, I reckon I can do it with relative minimal modifications. Let's have a crack at it. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, bloody hell. I forgot about the ignition port. No wonder I can't get this bloody thing out. Geez, lucky I didn't break anything. Right, so the ignition port has been disconnected. So we should be able to get the fire tube out now. Oh, shit. Oh, thermocouple. Jeez. I'm not having a good go here, am I? Bloody hell. Probably bloody bent the thing. Oh. Now the filter's in the way. Oh, bloody hell. Talk about scatterbrain. I can't believe this thing is so bloody hard to get out. Oh, yeah, no, I did bend it. That's your problem. I'll have to straighten that up. Alright, I managed to get the thermocouple out. Tell you what, I don't believe it. I feel like an idiot. Who built this thing? Bloody hell, I can't even pull my own contraption apart without messing it up. I'll tell you what, I need to switch on. Ah, this is not going good, is it? Bloody hell. Now I'm going to fall off the thing too. Alright, is anything else connected to this bloody thing? Is it going to come out, or is there something else? That's got to be in. Out we come. Up to daisy. Easy goes. Alright, so far so good. There we go, it's all out. It's a bit of rusty stuff there. That's from the soapy water when I did the leak test. It looks like the gasket well and truly stayed intact. The other bits are obviously on the back of the fire tube. Yeah, it's all looking good down there. At least I can get to stuff now. So it looks like I won't need to pull the gasifier any further apart. Rightio, well this is the bit that gets welded to the grate, and this attaches the grate to the agitator shaft, and that's how the grate becomes rotating. The agitator shaft is still going to continue up inside the grate, and that's purely just because I really don't want to cut that off. So I made this bit here, I've just filed some notches. So it goes something like so, and the notches, that's just so it's a little bit easier to weld to this. If I had a lathe, I would have turned this out in a single piece, but as I don't, this is sort of a compromise. Right, so we're just going to press the bush out of the grate. I've pushed out the bush, and that's to make room for this thing, the shaft to grate attachment duvalaga thingamajig, let's call it that. Yeah, not sure what happened here. Spot the obvious. This thing here was supposed to have been 18mm. I don't know, I must have been on autopilot or suffer from a brain fart or whatever, I'm not sure, but somehow, one way or another, I made this out of 24mm. And I should have known, it should have, I don't know, it should have laid a click, because when I married these two bits together, I did notice, I sort of thought, oh, it's not much of a lip there. It should have sent bells ringing, but it didn't. Anyway, just so happens I got a bit of 18mm scrap, so I'm going to whack this on a bandsaw, cut this off, drill this out, and then marry them together, and we'll continue on. Here we are, that's a new one. Well, there you go. The grate has been converted from stationary to rotary, just with this fitting here. And like I probably explained a little bit earlier, this thing here, that's just to cover the top of the shaft, which I really don't want to cut off at this stage. Well, at least not yet. I'm just going to do this up. I just want to take it for a bit of a test spin. Just curious how it's going to look. Makes it seeing the grate spinning around. Alright, low speed. Then high speed. Well, I think that didn't turn out too bad. One thing though, I don't think a 12mm shaft is necessarily rigid or strong enough for this sort of application. When you consider things here are going to get very hot, you're going to have all the charcoal weighing down on this, things are going to be rotating and this and that. So I really think I think I need to provide some sort of support up near the grate around the shaft. I can use one of the bronze bushes, the one I took out of the grate for that. Yeah, I'm just going to lob these tabs off the grate. On the sides here, I've still got the original brackets for the grate, so I think I might repurpose those and come up with some sort of support, some sort of thing here. So I just put a 12mm hole through this, roughly center it there, that's about right. I've managed to keep the brackets for the grate. So this bit of flat bar used to sit somewhere up around here, so I've just moved it down here. So yeah, no waste here, so I'm just going to weld these up. So this is pretty much the agitator shaft support. The way it is now, it's fine just to leave it like this, with this being mild steel and the agitator shaft being chrome steel. That's just fine. You know, it's not going to wear the shaft. But since I got the bronze bush, I might as well use it. And plus, I mean, it will give me a much better fit anyway. Normally, I would have drilled this hole out before I went along and started welding bits to it. But I didn't in this case because I didn't have an 18mm drill bit. But yeah, that's turned up now, so yeah, we're good to go. it's not quite center. Well, one of these days I will get that lathe. So it turns out I don't really need to press this in, it just drops in on its own. I think it's going to spin around on me. A bit of gov wire here. I will place that with the bush and we'll see. Does that make a difference? Oh yeah. So do I bash it in or do I press it in? Oh, I reckon I might be able to tap it in. Yeah, that feels solid. I think for what it is, I reckon that'll do the job just fine. Beautiful. I've got the day off work today and I was supposed to be paving the driveway. It's been raining, so everything's a bit wet. So I probably won't be doing too much of that, and probably I'll be spending some more time in the shed. Rightio, well I think that's pretty much done. So I reckon, yeah, that looks a hell lot better with the support being right up near the grate. So that's definitely, you know, that's not going to go anywhere. And also, as you can see, I cut the tabs off the grate because they probably won't be needed anymore. So we'll just switch it on. Low speed, high speed. Good-o. Well, that's one job done. I just ripped these on the bandsaw. These metal strips here, they're basically going to be for the retaining angle for the rubber seal. So I'm just going to tack weld these on the back of the door. That's because in order to fix my leaking problem, I'm actually going to glue the rubber seal to the back of the door, and that way it's going to be pressing up against the sheet metal edge on the hatch opening. Yeah, basically this edge here. So the rubber gasket is going to be pushed onto this edge here, which is going to be much better for sealing. You won't need half as much pressure to get contact. The retaining angle has been welded to the back of the hatch door, so I just gave it a quick paint job with some of that flame-proof high temperature paint. So I'm just going to use the existing rubber door seal. Now ideally for applications like this, you would normally have used much wider seal. It just gives you a little bit more wriggle room. But since I'd already purchased this, I thought, well, rather than having to go and purchase something new, I thought I might as well just keep using this. So I've had to be quite careful and making sure that this lines up with the hatch opening. All done, it's all glued in, and you can really see the sealant. It's squeezing out underneath the retaining angles. So the bottom of the retaining angle, that's well and truly sealed. So yeah, hopefully that should work. Fingers crossed. So I'm just going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow I'll whack it on the gasifier. Oh, well, that looks pretty good. Once you do the bolts up, the door sits like this. So the seal sits in the middle of that sheet metal edge. So I think that should give us a pretty good seal. If not, well, it has to. In the last video, I asked the question whether or not, once the blowers have stopped working, whether any of the tar gas went beyond the pyrolysis zone. There was a ton of tar being made above the pyrolysis zone. So I've just been taking this thing apart just to have a look. Alright, so the black stuff you see in there, that sort of sooty stuff, that's from the very first test where it did produce a lot of tar. I mean, just look at that. So I'll run my finger there like so. That's remarkably clean. That's good news. That means before the blowers stopped, it wasn't producing tar. Now, after the very first test, I cleaned this up. Let's have a look at it. I'll run my finger around that. Same thing again, clean as. Well, that's good news. That is very encouraging. Right, so the gasifier is all back together again. For this test, I'll just be running the one blower. Rightio, well, I think it's time to give this thing a kick in the guts. If you have a look, you can see the rubber gasket is compressing nicely on that sheet metal edge. So this time I know to start with that blanking plate in place, so we get nice vacuum through the ignition port. Blower on. So I just ended up removing the lid again just to let it breathe in through the ignition port just a little bit longer. That way it seems to light up better if I do that. So that's going quite good now. Okay, I think that's well and truly alight. We can put that back on again. Yeah, still getting the hang of starting this thing up. Yeah, we're getting there. So we are getting a tiny bit of smoke. Yeah, so the fire, it's beginning to slowly spread. I don't know, it seems a little bit slow to start up. So maybe I need to insulate this thing sooner rather than later. So I've just hooked up both the blowers just to get the thing started up a little bit quicker. So there's plenty of smoke coming out now. One thing I noticed was that it was really quite slow to start up with just a single blower. As soon as I connected the second blower, I could see it immediately. It really began to heat up quicker. So we'll keep the two blowers going for just a little while yet. Right, yeah, it's been a few more minutes. I've been running two blowers, and yes, she's getting really hot now. I just had to prod it before. I had a bit of a slight bridge, a slight hollow burn, so I prod it a little bit and it's slumped down a bit, so I've just been adding in some extra fuel, and I've just been running the agitator every couple of minutes. So yes, she seems to be running quite good. Alright, let's give it a go. Hey! We got a flare. Hooray! That looks pretty good too. Went out. Let's try again. Oh, so close. Drop down to one blower. Let's see how we go. Right, once two. Come on. So I just connected up the second blower, see if we can get different result. Come on. I've got the agitator running on low. Whoop. That's it. Power supply just tripped on over temp, just like last time. Okay, let's make some tar, boys. Well, that didn't go any better. If anything, this test was actually worse. Alright. I'm going to put a lid on it and call it a day. Alright, that's it. We're done. Alright, let's see if we got any condensate. Oh, it's a little bit. Not a lot. Ah, yeah, that's not too bad. It's the day after that test run, and I've got to be honest with you, I had hoped for more. I'm a little bit disappointed that the third test at least wasn't as good, if not better, than the second test. I was kind of planning and hoping that the test runs would become better and better. Yeah, so obviously something's changed, because it ran worse, even though I've fixed a lot of things on it. So the question is, what's changed? Because I don't like to change more than one thing at a time, but after the third test, there were too many things that I couldn't ignore. But getting back to what's changed, well, the only thing that's really changed that could affect the running of the gasifier would be the changes I made to the grate. You know, how I welded those small bits in. Yeah, I reckon that's probably made the thing not breathe quite as well. It's got to be said though, during the test, I got a sustainable flare fairly quickly, fairly early on, even though it was only for a short time. And what happened was I turned the agitator off and the flare went out. So I turned the agitator back on, tried this and tried that, and I just couldn't get it back on. So it would appear that it's still not breathing properly, and I'm pretty certain it's not the fuel. So all I can think of, it has to be the grate. Also, during this test, I noticed that the thing won't run properly with only one blower, which it managed to do in the second run. So obviously it needs two blowers to get enough airflow through. So that could also be because of the grate, I'm thinking. Because really the changes I made to the grate, that was centered around the agitator. But now with the agitator gone, I guess that means that the changes I made to the grate are no longer relevant. Before I wind this video up, I just want to have a quick look just to see how the new door seal stacked up. Oh, it's stuck. It's stuck. Well, that's got to be good. That means we've got a seal. Oh, okay. Well, that's looking good, isn't it? You can see where that metal edge has been pressing on the door seal all the way around. So you got a complete seal there. And just having a look at the back of the door, I cannot see any evidence that it's been leaking in air. That's good news. And there's no excessive tar buildup either. Well, that's a win. So just having a look inside the gasifier, and see here there's plenty of charcoal building up, and some of it is obviously getting stirred up by the thermocouple. So just looking down at the floor, there's not a lot of charcoal down there. Actually, there's not much at all. There's plenty of fine stuff. Rightio, well, let's try low speed. Well, there's not much dropping through. Look at that. If anything, it's overflowing where it's hitting the thermocouple. Let's try high speed. Yeah, there's a tiny bit coming through, but it's not much at all, really. It's very little. Alright, I'll stop that. Alright, well that's pretty clear. The grate isn't doing much. Yeah, the charcoal is hitting the thermocouple and it's, yeah, falling out of the grate. So that's how the big pieces are ending up on the floor. They're not actually coming through the grate. There's another thing I'm really keen to have a look at, and that is, did we produce any tar? Downstream from the pyrolysis zone, that is. So let's have a look. I'm going to rub my finger around the inside of this pipe. Look at that. Alright, let's have a look at the back of this. Well, I've got to say, I'm mighty happy with that. It is. There's a tiny bit of sort of a, you could almost say a slightly greasy, well not even greasy layer, just a slight bit of some sort of film. But look, it's not even, that's good news. I'm happy with that. So it wasn't a complete disaster, at least. Well, there you go. That's a bit of good news. That we only seem to be producing tar here. That's where you want to produce tar, because that's 50% of fuel, but no tar there. So yeah, I'm happy with that. So at least that's one thing that seems to be going my way. Now, as far as the grate goes, at least now I think I know what to do, and I need to get the grate back to how it was before. And the good thing there is that those pieces of metal that I welded in, they were only tack welded in, so they'll be relatively easy to get out. Not only that, it's becoming quite clear, in order to get this thing to run properly, I really can't do it without the stirrer or the compactor, which will prevent hollow burns or bridging. And also, at least for the time being, I really need the agitator to run off a timer, because I keep forgetting to turn the thing on. Also, I've got to consider that the speed that the grate is rotating at, it possibly is a little bit slow, or on the slow side, and that was because that was really intended for that rotary agitator. Yeah, so there's a few things there that could work, but as I said before, look, I don't want to change too many things at once, because then you don't know what worked. So I think between now and the next run, I think I'll just change the grate, and then we'll spark this thing up again, and we'll see what the change is. Rightio, well, until then, cheers. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you again.